What is going on, everybody? Welcome into TTP Sports. Decided to do some late night talk. I probably would have done this earlier, but I wasn't home when all this news broke about the whole Quinn Hughes trade, which was fucking insane because I wasn't expecting it to happen this soon. I thought this thing was probably going to linger around until maybe the trade deadline. I thought this thing was going to linger around until the offseason, but no, as all the rumors just constantly started, just kept going through. It was just like, oh my god, is this trade actually going to happen? And then just randomly, it was like around 8 o'clock, maybe like 7:30, between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. You get the breaking news from Elliot Friedman that Quinn Hughes got traded to the Minnesota Wild. I'm like, what the fuck? What the fucking flying fuck? I'm like, I'm sitting in the movie theater. I'm next to my father. I show him the trade. He's like, Jesus. It's just like that's the main reaction. Well, first, the main reaction was like, excuse me? He got traded? I wasn't expecting that. And then you think to yourself, oh my god, of course. The guy that the Flyers were interested in, rumored it and all that, blah, 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 blah. Of course they didn't get him. And it's funny, too. It's like, when they keep talking about the teams that were circled in the rumors, it was always the Flyers, it was always the New Jersey Devils, it was the Detroit Red Wings, I believe. The Minnesota Wild did not appear in any rumor whatsoever, and apparently it was talked about, like, after the fact, that during this entire negotiating process, the Wild came in at the last minute, basically, last week, and they put an offer on the table, and I guess it was too good to pass up for Vancouver. It's a good return for Vancouver. I'm not going to deny that. Vancouver got a very good haul for Quinn Hughes, and it's not your standard like traditional like when a good player, like a great player in this league gets traded in the haul is very underwhelming. No, this is actually a very solid haul, like a good haul for the Vancouver Canucks. So, good on Jim Rutherford for getting that deal done. And if you just want to look, well, everyone knows the trade at this point, and we're talking about it. So Quinn Hughes, he goes to the Minnesota Wild for Marco Rossi, Zeev Buium, which was kind of shocking that they traded Zeev Buium, Liam O'Gren, in a 2026 first-round pick. So Quinn Hughes, he's not expected to be a free agent until the 2027 offseason. So the Minnesota Wild, they got him for a season and a half at this point. They definitely gave up a lot to get Quinn Hughes, which was to be expected because obviously he still had the year left on the contract. There was going to be a lot, Vancouver was going to be demanding a lot, and Minnesota put themselves in the position because, they've been playing solid this year. They got Kirill Kaprizov. Now you add a Quinn Hughes to that mix. You got really good goaltending in Minnesota. They're trying to push. They're trying to, for once, go on a deep playoff run. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And granted, this whole thing is going to be, like, I don't even know if it's, like, bearing if Quinn Hughes is going to extend in Minnesota. I'm not entirely sure. There are reports out there that this does not guarantee that, or Quinn Hughes' camp has not guaranteed the Minnesota Wild that he's going to extend in Minnesota. Do I think he eventually hits the market? I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure on that fact whatsoever. I just, in my personal opinion, when it comes to National Hockey League free agency, I'll believe it when I see it, when a top player hits the market, because we were told so much about the 2026 offseason and the 2026 free agency class that was supposed to be star-studded. It was supposed to have all these players on expiring deals: Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, Kirill Kaprizov, etc., etc., etc. Nope. None of those guys hit the market. They all extended their contracts. Granted, Connor McDavid only signed a 2-year extension with the Edmonton Oilers, and I'm pretty sure he's already regretting that. Probably. Because Edmonton actually made a trade. I think this was this morning or yesterday after. I think it was this morning, actually, that they traded for Tristan Jarry of the Pittsburgh Penguins. They basically swapped goaltenders. And Tristan Jarry, definitely an upgrade over Stuart Skinner, but is he really the goaltender that you're trying to go win a Stanley Cup with? Not entirely sure that's the case for the Edmonton Oilers. Don't think Connor McDavid really likes that contract, even though, granted, he only put in 2 years, so it's basically put up or shut up for Edmonton, because if you don't figure things out in these next 2 years, Connor McDavid's gone. But still, just in the whole terms and the whole theory of National Hockey League free agency, it just doesn't exist. top stars hitting the market, it just doesn't exist. It is a rare occasion, like a once in a blue moon, when a top player in the league hits free agency. I couldn't even tell you the last time a top player hit free agency. I think the last time, honestly, that you could say that was probably Alex Pietrangelo. I think that was the last like top guy in the league at that point. Like at that point of his career, after he won the Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues, hitting free agency, he was definitely one of the top defensemen in the league, and he went and signed with Vegas. So that definitely is a rare occurrence. And then I guess you can also say John Tavares or something like that when he signed in Toronto. It's a rare thing. It does not happen in the NHL. Team players usually just stay in the team that drafted them, or they get traded or whatsoever. They eventually extend with that team. Hockey players are very loyal to the team that they're with. They just don't hit the market. They just don't hit the market, and maybe that has to do with the salary cap system and all that stuff. I'm not entirely sure, but it's just it's non-existent. It's non-existent, and just the whole tie this thing back into the Flyers, which was realistically the entire relatively of this stream. This, I guess you can consider it barroom discussion. You guys can go off in the live chat here. I got a couple of you. I got Franco and I got Tyler in there. I'm not sure if anybody from Flyers Twitter appeared on here. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, and I'm not entirely sure. I wish I could embed this thing on Twitter, like to where you could watch this on Twitter, but obviously I don't feel like paying for Twitter Premium to where I can also live stream this on Twitter. So that just is what it is. But just to tie this thing back to the Flyers, um, is this whole thing to where, because I definitely expressed my frustration on Twitter, 100%, and it's not just for the sole fact that the Flyers didn't acquire Quinn Hughes. Did I expect them to acquire Quinn Hughes? Probably not. Probably not at the end of the day, just because of the haul that it would have taken to get a guy like a Quinn Hughes caliber. I just didn't think it was realistic for this Flyers team, just considering that they don't have much in terms to give up, because most likely you would have likely had to given up one of Matvei Michkov or a Porter Martone, and I know for a fact that those two guys are untouchable when it comes to trades. And then basically from that, what else do you have to trade that is going to be valuable to some of these other teams? Everything that with the rumors that was going around with Vancouver, they wanted a top 6 caliber center, a young center in that fact. I'm sure I got to that point with the Zeev Buium, they wanted a top pairing defenseman as well, a guy that could potentially be a top pairing defenseman. I mean, could you like throw in the factor? Maybe you could have thrown in one of your defensemen on the roster. Maybe you could have thrown in a Cam York into that deal or something like that. Maybe. Could you circle that around to Tyson Forrester? Maybe. But the trade would have had to involve the Martone or a Michkov. It would have had to. And I can understand why the Flyers wouldn't want to do that, because you would definitely be sacrificing a lot of your future in that point to get Quinn Hughes, where it's still not a guarantee that he would extend in Philadelphia. But it frustrates me to a fact with the team right now. And yeah, like, don't get me wrong, I'm having fun that they are winning games. I'm having fun that they're in the playoff conversation and all that stuff. I'm not trying to like poo-poo on the entire thing. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to sound like a negative Nancy. I'm not trying to sound like a Debbie Downer and all that stuff. But I'm trying not to look at just this year in an aspect. Not just this year. I'm trying to look at years down the line. I'm trying to look at what this team, told us they're trying to build this thing into. And when you just remove what they're doing right now, because when you look at this Flyers team just in verbatim right now, when you look at this team just as a whole, we all know the glaring things that they're missing. It's completely obvious. We say this on a daily basis, that they don't have a number one center. They don't have that in the pipeline. They don't have that on the roster. They don't have a game-changing franchise center. Well, not fully, you don't have an elite number one center. That's basically it. You don't have an elite number one defenseman. That's also a problem that this team does not have. Right now, they do have the goaltender in Dan Vladar, and they might have the goaltender in Russia with Zavragin when he possibly comes over. So you might have the goaltender, and I do think the goaltender at the end of the day might be the easiest thing to solve, and that's crazy even coming from a Flyers perspective, because this team just never figures out goaltending. But they do have something in Dan Vladar. He's been playing it very well this year, way above his head. And yeah, it still remains to be seen what it's going to be like when his workload gets to something to where he hasn't done before. But right now, with the way that he's playing, this is what he is. This is what he is. He's been a top goaltender in the league this year. So he's one of the main reasons why they're winning games. He's one of the main reasons why they're in a playoff discussion. He is. That's borderline a fact right there. But still, and there's still like good fun things about the team. Like Trevor Zegras has been very good this year. I've loved watching Trevor Zegras play. Everything right there. Tyson Forrester before the injury, he has been very fun to watch. I like his goal scoring capabilities. His shot has always been electric. There's been some fun things with the defense. You know, Cam York's been playing a lot better. Jamie Drysdale's been playing a lot better. So those things are definitely fun there, obviously, from the Dan Vladar perspective. But still, with this whole Matvey Michkov thing, with the whole coming out of shape, the whole thing with Rick Tocchet still not, limiting his minutes to where he's only playing like 12, 13 minutes a night. Yeah, that's definitely annoying. I do think Michkov deserves a longer leash, in my personal opinion. I understand the offseason crap that went down and him showing up out of shape and blah, 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 blah. If we just go to yesterday's game, if we go to last night's game against the Vegas Golden Knights, main issues. And it goes revolving around the end of the game. And Tocchet was definitely a little bit annoyed post-game, I think, when some people were asking him these questions. When it's tied 2-2, you're going into the final minutes of the third period. Vegas takes the penalty. You go on the power play, I'd say, within the final 4 minutes of the third period. The power plays that you had during the game, I think the setup was, Trevor Zegras, Travis Konechny, I think it was Jamie Drysdale, Owen Tippett, and Matvey Michkov as the top unit. Those guys, that unit was been the past few games. They were on the first few power plays of that game. And then all of a sudden, the power play changes on that specific final 4 minutes of the third period. Instead of Owen Tippett and Matvey Michkov out there on that power play unit with Drysdale, with Konechny, with Trevor Zegras, it was Noah Cates and Bobby Brink. And that entire line stayed out there the entire power play. And they didn't generate anything, which was to be expected. Because why would you even change up that power? And granted, the other power plays didn't do much at the beginning stages of the game either, but why would you want to change something for the sake of change? And that's exactly what Rick Tocchet's explanation was at the end of the game. It's like, the two power plays earlier, those guys weren't generating anything. I was just trying something different. So basically, he just changed for the sake of change. So basically, I understand Michkov hasn't played up to his expectations this year, but still, I feel like putting Matvey Michkov out there on the power play put you in a better possible position to succeed, just in my personal opinion, but what do I fucking know? Then 3-on-3 overtime happens. The worst turnover possible that I've ever seen in my fucking life by Travis Konechny. For some reason, in his own zone, decides to circle around like 50 billion times. Circle around, circle around, circle around, circle around. And then he inevitably did it too much to where he just fucking lost the puck. And he lost it to the worst person on the ice, which was fucking Jack Eichel. And the dude fed a beautiful saucer pass to Mark Stone, who's fucking driving. And that also, mind you, the fact that Sean Couturier lost him on the play, too. So it was also Couturier fucking dragging on the play that allowed Mark Stone to even get into that position to begin with. So, yeah, the guys that have been harping on Matvey Michkov all fucking year talking about playing the right way, yeah. Ugh. Bad luck for you two. And then what else was I trying to say? It also goes to, like, granted, everyone knows here I do the editing for Snow the Goalie. And you can tell from Russ's reaction from what... And Anthony Sanfilippo, he was definitely more speaking out of frustration and tiredness and crankiness because he was at the winter meetings. He was on press row last night, basically coming out of a flight back from Florida, and I'm sure he was very exhausted, so I think he just let his emotions get the best of him. But to say basically that Matvey Michkov doesn't deserve to play 3-on-3 overtime because he can't skate is the dumbest thing in the world that I've ever heard in my life. Dumbest thing. And you can hear and you can see it in Russ's face. I purposely edited that short to make you look like how annoyed Russ was, literally just breaking the fourth wall right there, like just staring at the camera like he normally does. It's the dumbest thing. It is the dumbest thing. Because I can make that argument for so many other players on the Flyers roster. Why they should not be out there solely because of their skating. Because of their skating. Sean Couturier probably is a worse skater than Matvei Michkov, yet he's out there. Tyson Forrester's not the best skater. He was out there before the injury. There's many other players on the Flyers roster that are not good skaters, but why does Matvei Michkov get singled out because he's not good at skating? It's ridiculous. Matvei Michkov, Torts put him out there so much last year in 3-on-3 overtime, and you found success with it. Mark Stone's fucking out there in 3-on-3 overtime. Mark Stone is one of the worst skaters in the National Hockey League. Yet he's out there 3-on-3 overtime. Yeah, I'm calling bullshit on the fucking can't skate excuse as to why you're not putting him out there 3-on-3 overtime. For some reason, Michkov is in the fucking doghouse of Tocchet. But no, you don't want to put your best chips on the fucking table. Put your best guy that could probably produce offense 3-on-3. Put him out there in the overtime, and maybe you would have generated a fucking goal against Vegas. Maybe you would have came out of that 2 points against Vegas instead of 1. It's just pure, it's dumb. It is dumb, it is dumb, it is dumb, it is dumb. Why we're limiting Michkov's minutes, everything. I understand that he came in out of shape. I understand that. The dude's still fucking talented. The dude does. You're basically putting your team at a net negative when you don't put him out there on the power play. When you don't put him in offensive situations, it does not make fucking sense. Why is Sean Couturier out there in 3-on-3 overtime when the dude can't fucking skate? And Rick Tocchet says in postgame, like he didn't specifically point out Owen Tippett and Matvei Michkov at the end, but he kind of did. Even though, when talking about the power play, why'd you take those two off the power play in particular? Like, he didn't specifically harp on them, but then he tried to state there was 10 other guys that weren't, skating that night. Where I think he was really just trying to point out Michkov and Tippett. Where I remember so many plays during last night's game where Tippett and Michkov created shit. I'm like, what the fuck are you even watching out there, Toc? What the fuck are you watching out there? And, does he not even remember in the third period last night where Michkov forced a turnover in the neutral zone when Vegas was trying to make a stretch pass? Michkov comes behind the guy, pokes the puck through the neutral zone off of the Vegas player's stick, and here comes Sean Couturier. He basically forced the turnover off the Vegas player, Michkov that is, forced it into a pass, an outlet pass up the neutral zone ice, which allowed Couturier to get a breakaway, and Couturier hit the post. That's not Michkov doing something? That's not worthy of rewarding him on a power play late in the game? That's not, deserving of rewarding him in 3-on-3 overtime? No, apparently fucking not in the coach's eyes. Apparently fucking not. I just don't fucking understand it. Why Michkov is in the doghouse so much. It feels like right now Rick Tocchet just doesn't trust him. At all. At all. We're 2.5 fucking months into the season. Michkov deserves the benefit of the fucking doubt, in my personal opinion. And yeah, I'm going to go bat for Michkov because you're the one that labeled him the next face of the franchise. You did this to your fucking selves. And I see the talent in Michkov every time I'm out there. I don't harp on that he showed it out of shape. He doesn't look out of shape on the fucking ice to me, in my personal opinion. We're 2.5 months into the fucking season. He's probably not out of shape anymore. Just saying. Just saying. But what do I fucking know? Apparently, I don't coach a team. What do I have? I'm not allowed to express my frustrations about that. Because it's dumb, apparently. Because it's dumb, apparently. Yeah, I'm throwing shots at Ant. Love Ant. But sometimes you gotta throw shots when you gotta throw shots. It just doesn't make sense. And then to now get off of that game, really, because that was my frustrations from that game. In that final so many sequences of the game, a lot of frustrations. Yes, it's good that because the game was evenly paced, the game was evenly matched against Vegas. If you seriously, the shots even showed that 5-9, 5-9 for both teams. Seriously, the teams, Flyers and the Golden Knights, they tied in shots in each exact period, 5-9, 5-9. It was the weirdest. It was the most evenly matched game I've ever seen in my life. And yeah, it's good to get a You played up the Vegas. You got a point in overtime. Same thing with the Colorado Avalanche. You found a way to get. No, you didn't get a point in that game. You lost in regulation, but it was a hard fought contest till the very end. You just couldn't get that extra goal to tie the game up. Like, yeah, I do find like moral victories and positives out of that and all that stuff. Blah 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 blah. I just when I think about like and it's like I'm not trying to go into this entire thing saying that Rick Tocchet. I'm not saying that whatsoever that Rick Tocchet is a bad coach. I'm not saying that Rick Tocchet deserves. I'm not saying that whatsoever. There are just things with Rick Tocchet that I just don't. That just make me scratch my head. That I just need to question. And it's the same type of questions that I have with John Tortorella as a head coach. Why do you think so many people compared Rick Tocchet and John Tortorella in the styles that they well not I really don't think their styles are even similar. Tort's definitely, factored into more of like transition offense and like a lot of plays off of the rush. Tocchet focused a lot more on the defensive style and everything. Tort's focused on blocking a lot of shots. Tocchet forced stuff, keeping things to the outside, which benefits the goaltenders more. So there's definitely a lot of difference into their system, and Tocchet's definitely more, I guess, willing to communicate with his players more than a John Tortorella will. John Tortorella wants players to go to him, while Tocchet will talk to the players. So there's definitely differences with Rick Tocchet and John Tortorella. I just, right now, I don't like the way that he's coaching Michkov. I really don't. And whether that's solely just on the fact that he showed up out of shape and everything like that, I don't know. I don't know. And no, I'm not saying that Rick Tocchet is stunting Matvei Michkov's growth. I'm not saying anything like that. I just wish like you would give the kid more of a leash because he is uber talented. He has all the talent in the world, and I feel like you're just not putting your best chip forward into maybe this team can produce more offensive talent, if that makes sense. And also Michkov being, anchored to fucking Sean Couturier every fucking game. It's not going to help. And that's not a knock to Couturier. Couturier just isn't. He just isn't going to produce offensively like he could. And granted, Couturier wasn't an offensive barn burner. He definitely wasn't. But he was definitely capable, like, at his best, at his peak, to put up, like, 75 to, almost point per game. He was able to score 30 goals at his peak. You know what I mean? That's not Couturier anymore. He just physically can't do that. He physically is incapable of doing that. And sadly, he's forced to be in that position because this team does not have any goddamn centers that are game-changing. They just don't. I like Noah Cates. I like Noah Cates. I like what Christian Dvorak's doing this year. I do. I do. Those guys are not top-line centers. Those guys are not second-line centers. They're just not. They're not top six centers. They're bottom six centers. Noah Cates, on a good team, he's a third-line center. That's what he is. Same thing with possibly a Christian Dvorak. He's a third-line center. You have a lot of third-line centers on this team playing higher roles. That's your fucking problem. You don't have centers. You don't have a top-pairing defenseman. Travis Sanheim, I like the way Travis Sanheim is playing, but realistically, if you think about it, is Travis Sanheim on a contending team? Is he a first caliber, first guy, like a number one defenseman? He probably could be on a first pair. He's not a number one defenseman. He could be a number two. He could be a number three. He's not a number one. He's not a number one. You don't have the number one. I don't think Cam York's a number one. I don't think Jamie Drysdale's a number one. I've liked what Emil Andre has been doing, but I don't think he's a number one either. And I don't think you have anybody in the prospect system that could be a number one. I don't think Oliver Bonk's the number one defenseman. I think it's just another standard top four defenseman. I just don't think that you have that in the pipeline. I really don't. And in terms of top centers, I don't think you have that in the pipeline either. As much, as it's good for Jet Luchenko to be traded to Brantford to play with Jay McKee and all that stuff with the best team in the OHL in the Bulldogs, like, as much that could help his development, I still don't think at the end of the day, like, at his peak, I think Jet Luchenko's a number two center. Like, I think his floor is third center. That's just what I think. I don't think he could be that top echelon first line center that the Flyers probably trying to portray him to be. I don't think Jack Nesbitt could be that guy. I personally just don't see that. I don't. And that's where a lot of, scouts, people that watch tape, people that watch these prospects in the OHL and everything like that, I just don't see it. I don't see it. And you don't have anybody else in the prospect system that could be that guy. And that falls back on where I question the rebuild. Because you harped on so much and you told the fan base so much that you're going to have so much cap space in the 2026 offseason, you're going to have a boatload of cap space. And that's true. They're going to have a boatload of cap space. What are you going to spend that cap space on? What are you going to spend that cap space on? There's nobody in free agency. There clearly isn't. All those guys are signed. All those top guys that you were probably banking on hitting the market, at least one of them, all those guys signed. Kirill Kaprizov, signed. Extended long term. Jack Eichel, extended long term. Connor McDavid, signed 2 years, but he's still extended. He's not going to be on the market for another few years. So those guys are fucking off the market. And now a defenseman that you probably wanted, he's off the market for another year and a half. Because Minnesota definitely ain't trading him. And I wouldn't be shocked if they extended him eventually. Because I just wouldn't be shocked. So what are you going to do with that cap space? What are you going to do? How are you going to acquire a number one defenseman and a first-line center? I just don't see the path that you could do that. Like, realistically, the only way that I could see you maybe going after a first-line center or a number one defenseman is if guys from Buffalo, like Tage Thompson or Rasmus Dahlin, request out of there. That is the only way that I could see you getting those guys. Because these guys, the teams just don't give away number one pairing defensemen and first-line centers on trees. They just don't. They physically don't. Now, yeah, maybe you can get a team that is just, like, willing to press the reset button on their franchise, and maybe you can go after one of their top guys on that roster. But I still put into the fact that I don't think that you built up this prospect system enough, in my personal opinion, because if you really think about this, I'm just going to be explaining first rounds of drafts right now, but I understand there's later rounds in drafts, but those guys are more, throwing a needle at, trying to find a needle in a haystack. You're just throwing a dart at the board to see what sticks. That's basically what the second through the last rounds are in the NHL draft. I'm more really talking about first rounds in the NHL draft. But when you think about it, like, just over the course of this fucking time that they've been quote unquote drafting high and rebuilding in this draft, you can even go back to the first year, or the last year of Chuck Fletcher as the GM, where they drafted Cutter Gauthier. That was the highest that they drafted at any point of these drafts during this rebuild. That was the highest. That was 5th overall. That was the highest they've ever drafted so far in this stretch. The year after that, they drafted 7 overall. Yeah, Mitchkov followed them. Year after that, fake playoff run, which got them 11th overall. Then they traded back to 12th overall, which they drafted Jet Luchenko. And then this past draft, they got 6th overall. Yeah, Porter Martone fell to them. Porter Martone looks like a fucking beast at Michigan State, or whatever college he's at. One of the Michigans. He looks like a fucking beast. And that team can rightfully go and get to the Final Four of the NCAA, win the Frozen Four and all that stuff. They're a great team. They're a great team. The team that Porter Martone plays for. There's also another Flyers prospect there, too, that a lot of people are very high on. A lot of comparisons to Tom Wilson and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's definitely a fun thing right there. Porter Martone looks like a fucking beast. But then you trade up in that draft when you had 2 other picks. I believe you went up to 12 overall. You drafted Jack Nesbitt, where a lot of projections where he was a later part of the first round draft. He just was. And a lot of projections have him as a third-line center. So, in these past, and the guy that you drafted the highest out of these past 4 drafts, that guy told you to fuck off and said, I wanted nothing to fucking do with this organization. That really set you back. As much as you don't want to admit it, I understand you got Trevor Zegras and all that stuff eventually after that. As much as that they're not going to admit that, the Cutter Gauthier winning out of this for organization set you back. It did. Like I said, I'm having fun, with what they're doing right now so far, completing for a playoff spot and all that stuff. But I'm just not trying to focus on this year in general, because I want to see what this team can turn into over the course of so many years down the line. And right now, I just don't see what they can do without that first-line center and without that top-pairing defenseman. I just don't see that. And I don't know how they're going to acquire that. And I think Flyers fans, the ones that, have been negative a lot throughout this year, I think those people have a right to be frustrated. Because you have to look at this big picture-wise. You can't look at it just from a this-year aspect. Because, what if you don't make the playoffs this year? What if you don't make the playoffs this year? You're back into where you were so many years under Chuck Fletcher, so many years under Ron Hextall. You're in hockey purgatory, to where you're not bad enough to draft high, and you're not good enough to compete for a cup. You're back in that same mindset. You're back in that same heap that we've been stuck in for so long. And I'm just afraid that's where we're going to be back at. I'm really am afraid. And I don't want to, go on to this mindset that, oh, just get in the playoffs and anything could happen. I don't want to rely on that mindset. I want to be a team that competes for a Stanley Cup literally every goddamn season and has a good enough fucking shot to do it. I want to be a team like the Colorado Avalanche. I want to be, a team that's constantly competing like the Carolina Hurricanes. I want to be a team that's constantly competing like Dallas and all that stuff. A team like Florida and everything like that. I just do. And if you go back so many years over so many cup contenders and people that have won, teams that have won the cup, all those teams, I mean, except for one, and that team is such the fucking outlier because that was the biggest Cinderella story in the history of the goddamn NHL with the St. Louis Blues in 2019. Every team besides the Blues had at least one top three pick. Had at least one top three pick in their organization. The Blues were the only team to not do that. Because that was just a magical runs, and we're probably never going to see that again. Where a team halfway through the season is at the basement of the NHL, literally the worst spot you can get to, and somehow magically rises to get into the playoffs and wins the Stanley Cup in Game 7 in Boston in TD Garden. It's the magical run. The magical runs. But besides that, every team you can go to has at least one or two top three picks. Pittsburgh, obviously, with Fleury, Crosby, Malkin, all that stuff. Washington, obviously, with Ovechkin and all that stuff. And then, like, what else? Vegas, they traded for Jack Eichel. He's a number one pick. Florida, obviously, you got Kachuk, you got Uberdoge, you got Ekblad, and not Uberdoge, you got Barkov, you got Ekblad and all that stuff. Those guys were top picks. Chicago, obviously, with Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, all that stuff. Those guys were top picks. LA Kings, those guys had top picks. Every team you can point to has at least one or two top picks, top three picks. And this Flyers team does not have that. I understand Matvei Michkov in his draft would have been projected to go number 2 if it wasn't for geopolitical situations and all that stuff. So yeah, maybe you can put that as the outlier. I don't think Porter Martin was projected to go into the top 3. He probably was top 4, top 5, and he fell to you. And Cutter Cote, in this entire thing, the most important thing when you're rebuilding in the NHL is drafting high as possible. And you haven't done that. I never agreed with extended Travis Konechny. It's not a knock on Konechny. I don't hate Travis Konechny, but I just thought when you're in the mindset of a rebuilding team, you trade away your best assets to where you get the most profit in return. Travis Konechny would have given you that because he was probably your most valuable asset. You decided to extend him to an 8 by whatever the fuck he's making now. What is it, like 8.5, 9.5 or something like that? Almost 10 mil. I don't know. I don't know. Let me see Travis Konechny contract. So let me go Flyers Puckpedia. Flyers Puckpedia, so I could see their contracts. What is Konechny making? 8.75. Like you're too. And this is also a reason why, because there's a lot of people on the Flyers Twitterverse that like always harp on Konechny, they always harp on Couturier and all that stuff. These guys are the highest paid players in the team. Konechny, 8.75 mil. Couturier, 7.75 mil. And for so many years, with Claude Giroux, everyone harped on Claude Giroux, everyone harped on Jake Voracek, and then when those guys are gone, it transferred to Konechny and Couturier. Because if you realistically think about it, these are the last two guys from a whole decade of just misery for Flyers fans. And I don't blame Flyers fans for having that sentiment for these guys. Not that it's their fault, it's just they're the last face of that. And some Flyers fans are just tired of that era. They don't want to be reminded of that era anymore. And I completely understand that from a Flyers fan aspect. I really do. But you're going to have to focus on extending Trevor Zegras. I don't know if they're going to be... And there's already rumors about them possibly extending Christian Dvorak, which I don't think is the right thing to do in my personal opinion. Noah Cates, you already extended. He's on a good contract. He's making $4 million a season. I like Noah Cates. I like what he provides. I think he's a very solid third-line center. Tyson Forster, you extended before this year, and granted he is injured. He has another year after this on his contract at 3.75, which is very good. Bobby Brink, he's an RFA, so eventually I don't know if they're going to extend him or blah, 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 blah. Matvei Michkov, you're going to have to extend after this season. Gurbenkin, he's not going to be expensive. Jamie Drysdale, he's going into the final year of his contract. Zamula's just going to be fucking gone after this year, I hope. Same thing with Emil Andre. Well, not the same thing with Emil Andre from the Zamula standpoint, but Emil Andre has a contract that's going to expire after this year. He's an RFA, even though he's not going to be expensive whatsoever. Sam Ersson, I wonder if they just let him kick rocks after this year. He's an RFA. I'm not entirely sure. And yeah, you do have some guys that are coming off of the books in terms of like the retained salaries and the buyout caps and all that stuff with Cam Atkinson, with Scott Lawton, with Kevin Hayes and all that stuff. So that's a lot of money coming off of the books too. $5 million combined from Hayes and Scott Lawton, and like $1.75 million from Cam Atkinson's buyout. So yeah, you'll have money coming off of the books in that aspect too. Because if you look at cap projections for next season, for 26-27, the Flyers are going to have around $46.7 million in cap space, and then their projected cap space in 2027-2028 is $72.7 million. Yeah, they're going to have a lot of money. I'm not denying that. They're going to have a lot of money, but what are you going to spend it on? That's my issue. What are you going to spend it on? What are you going to spend it on? What are you going to expend? What are you going to spend it on? That's my problem. What are you going to spend it on? There's nobody in free agency. I don't know who you're going to trade for, because obviously you're not in a position to draft high anymore. You put that out the window this year. I really feel like you did. Now, granted, if they had worse goaltending, they probably would be one of the worst teams in the league, personally, in my opinion. That's just how good Dan Vladar has been playing. So realistically, you threw that out of the window. But who knows? Maybe if you do go on that inevitable long losing streak like they usually do at some point in the season, maybe that does throw them down further in the standings, just because that's how much parity there is in the Eastern Conference, because there's so much parity in this league this year. So I have no idea. I have no idea. I just don't know where they're going to get the most important positions that they do need right now. I just don't see it. And I sound like I'm poo-pooing everything. I sound like I'm negative and all that stuff. Because like I keep saying, I'm not looking at this season just for this season by itself. Yes, I'm having fun that they're winning. I'm having fun that they're in a playoff discussion, all that stuff. But I'm trying to think of the long-term plan that this team tried to tell us, then tried to sell us. I just don't know where it's going to go. I don't know how you're going to acquire the things that you're going to need to acquire, because obviously at this point, you're not going to be able to draft them, because you're not going to draft high enough. You're not going to draft high enough. And you could say, oh, just find them. You could find those guys in the draft, blah, 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 blah. You're not going to find them. Personally, I just don't think that's, like I said, you're finding a needle in a haystack. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's crazy. Like this team, I think that just their worst thing, right? I really do think that fake playoff run that they had a couple of years ago with Torts is also something that really pushed this thing back, because I don't know why they even tried to make the playoffs that year. I thought that was very fucking stupid, where you clearly needed another top draft pick. I thought that was fucking dumb. That was the dumbest thing in the world. You know what I mean? It was the dumbest fucking thing in the world, trying to get to a playoff run that year. It just doesn't make sense. Does not make sense at all. It's just frustrating with this team. It's very frustrating. A lot of people do share the sentiment on Twitter. It's just like, I just don't know where, we just don't know where that's eventually going to come from. I just don't know. I just don't know. And because it does suck, because when you look at some of the other teams that are rebuilding, now I'm not trying to say that these teams are like far above and ahead of the Flyers and all that stuff. I'm not trying to say that whatsoever. In terms of like the elite talent and the elite young talent, yeah, those teams are probably far and above away from the Flyers in that aspect. Like Macklin Celebrini has been fucking fantastic this year. Connor Bedard for the Blackhawks has been fantastic this year, but sadly, I know this is poor timing, because I think Bedard just got injured, and the injury does not look good. He is really favoring his shoulder, and in the game that he had against the Blues, and it looks like it was just I guess he was trying to win a face-off. I want to see this, because it literally just happened, like not that long ago. So it looks like he's trying to win a face-off, and Shen pushed him off the face-off, and then he just literally went down, favoring his shoulder. So hopefully it's not bad for Bedard, but it doesn't look good. It does not look good. That looks the same way that Tyson Forster reacted when he left the ice off that slap shot, just favoring his shoulder. So it could be a dislocation. He could be fine, but it also could be something that's bad. I don't know. Favoring the shoulder, it just looks scary. It looks scary. But Connor Bedard has been playing very well this year. He's been very fun to watch. all the young talent that the Anaheim Ducks have, they're fun, very fun to watch. Of course, fucking Cutter Gauthier is on the team, obviously. Seneca has been very fun. Leo Carlson's a beast. Like, there's so many teams that have a lot of this young, fun, exciting talent. And I just, the Flyers don't have that. They don't have that. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. But yeah, the Isles, like, yes, you can 100% get lucky in the NHL draft lottery. I'm not denying that. You can get lucky, like the Islanders did last year with Schaefer. You can get very lucky there. But I still feel like that's more rare than not. To go from where were the Islanders ranked, like 12th, 10th, 11th, or something like that, to win the draft lottery, that just doesn't happen often. Like, the best place to be down there is at the worst, because the worst you can move down is 2 spots. So the worst you want to be, realistically, is either the first or the second or the third worst team, to where you only move down 2 spots, to where you're drafting 5th at best, at worst. You're drafting 5th at worst. Last year, you put yourself as the 4th worst team, you drop down 2 spots to 6th, where you did draft Porter Martone. You got to put yourself in that position to do that. I just don't think that this team does that. Just didn't do that enough. They did not do that enough. I just think that's going to be not the downfall of this entire thing. It's just something that's just not going to, I think, help them reach the top, if that makes sense. Like, do I think they could still be a good team in the future? Yeah. But I still question how they're going to get there. That's realistic. That's just my whole mindset. How are they going to get there? Without drafting high now, because you threw that out the window, where is it going to come from? Where's this elite talent going to come from? Where's the center going to come from? Where's the defenseman going to come from now? Where's it going to come from? Where's it going to come from? Do you try to take another flyer like you did with a Trevor Zegras? A team and a young player that is not happy in their situation, not happy with the way they're being used, and maybe you try to take advantage of that other team that's just, willing to give away that person. Trevor Zegras has thrived in that position, but also Flyers fucking already gave up on Trevor Zegras, not even that, like, fucking 10 games into the season of him being a center. So, do you go that aspect? Do you go that route and maybe try to do that? Maybe. I know there was a lot of stuff, Marco Rossi, who was one of the guys that was rumored to be one of the guys from Minnesota that got traded for Quinn Hughes. The Flyers were tied to him for years. Tied to try to, they've been interested in him for years, but they were always afraid to trade for him because of his size. So, I just don't know where it comes from. Like, the best case scenario is that you hope Buffalo, guys like Tage Thompson, guys like Rasmus Dahlin, they request out, and you try to do a blockbuster trade involving those players, or one of those players. That's the only way I see that you can get that. Because Buffalo's always in turmoil. Buffalo's never going to be a good team. Those guys are eventually going to get tired of playing there, and they're eventually going to want to go to a team that has a better chance to compete. That's the only way that I see this, personally, in my opinion. I just don't see any other way. I really don't. So, just annoying. It's just annoying. My personal opinion. It's annoying. It's frustrating. We all just want this team to be good at the end of the day. And, like, I think a lot of people, like, the people that kind of always harp on the Flyers fans that are being so negative, it's like they think that these people want to be proven right. I don't think a lot of these people want to be proven right. They want to be proven wrong. It's just that they keep getting proven right. I think that's one of the problems. It's just like they've seen the same song and dance routine before, and they don't want to fall for it. They don't want to get hurt again. I think that's the problem. They don't want to get hurt and falling for it. Now, do I think some people in the Flyers media don't ask tough questions in terms of, like, how they're going to get this thing, like these elite talents? No, I don't think people do. I don't think they do. Do I think the media tries to, like, downplay, like, the importances and the needs of this Flyers team? Sometimes, yeah, I think they do. There's really nobody in the Flyers media that is willing to ask the tough questions. Now, I think the way to get around that possibly would be, you know, because Flyers fans, they have their season ticket holder, town hall meetings and all that stuff. Season ticket holders get a chance to talk to members of the front office. They get a chance to talk to Danny Briere. They get a chance to talk to Keith Jones and all that stuff. So maybe when that time eventually comes, fans can express frustration about that, about where they see the path in this rebuild going. Because I would definitely love to ask that question. I probably would ask that question if I had the chance. Well, I would have the chance because me and my father are season ticket holders. So if that opportunity does come, I would definitely take that chance and ask them that question. Not coming from a place of malice. I just want to know, where's this path taking us? Because I just don't see a path that gets us a number one center or a number one defenseman. I just don't see that. And I don't want to hear the answer because they're not going to tell you what the fucking plan is. They're going to hype up some of these, they're going to keep hyping up Michkov, obviously, which they should. They'll hype up Martone. They'll probably try to hype up Luchenko. They'll probably try to hype up Nesbitt and all that fucking crap. I don't want to hear about Luchenko and Nesbitt. I just don't. I just don't. Yeah, Nesbitt, Luchenko's playing well. I'm not denying that Luchenko's been playing well since he got traded. I just don't know what he's going to become at the NHL level. And a lot of the experts, a lot of people that watch the tape, a lot of people that watch these prospects every single day, some people just don't see him being more than a second, third line center. They just don't see that with him. And that's not what this team needs again. They don't need another third line center. They've been drafting way too many third line centers over so many years. It's not even funny. It's just it's annoyance. You know what I mean? It's annoyance. And it's not even to say I don't even think the Flyers would have been able to match that trade offer. I just don't think they would have. It's a lot of return going to the Vancouver Canucks. I just it's annoying. That's all. Just annoying. Just annoying. Let's see. Is there anything else that stands out? I want to have faith, Lyndon. I do. I do. I just. And like I said, it's not solely just because Quinn Hughes the Flyers didn't trade for Quinn Hughes. I think it's just the whole picture of this entire thing. I just don't know where it's going to end up. That's what I have fear in. That's where my questions linger. I don't know where this entire thing's going to end up. I don't know. Now, yes, they can make the playoffs this year. If Dan Vladar keeps playing good, maybe he can steal you around or something like that. Maybe they do surprise you in the playoffs and they win a round. I'm not guarantee. I can't guarantee that. Maybe, like Michkov has stated already that he does, he apologized and he realized his wrong of what he did this past offseason and he messed up and all that stuff. He realized that. He says that he's going to really prioritize training over the course of the Olympic break and all that stuff, and when next offseason comes, he's probably going to try to stay here and training it better and all that stuff, which is good. I want him to do that. I want him to do that because I want him to maximize his potential, and I think that'll make him even better. Yeah, who knows? Maybe Matvei Michkov takes full advantage of the break for the Olympic break in February because that's a couple of weeks off to where he can catch back up even more. And maybe you get a Matvei Michkov coming out of the Olympic break on fire, and he plays up to what his potential is, and he makes your team better by proxy, and that makes you feel 100 times better out of everything. Maybe they do make the playoffs, and maybe Porter Martone's season with NCAA is done at that point. He signs his entry-level contract. He comes to the NHL. He looks very good and all that stuff, and in the few games that he does play, whether it's the last few games of the regular season or in the playoffs or something like that, and he impresses, he's a lot of fun, maybe that does provide a lot of faith or something like that. I really just need to see what they're going to do. That's I just don't know what they're going to do. And I just keep repeating it because I think it's just warranted. Where are you going to find the first line center? Where are you going to find the first pairing defenseman? Where are you going to find it? Where are you going to find it? I just don't know where to do. I don't know where to do. I think that's where everything lies. It's as simple as that. It's crazy. I really was not expecting. I don't think any of us were expecting that trade to go down. like that quickly. Because me and my family, like the whole day it was did editing for Broads, did my editing for Russ, and all that stuff. Me and the fam go out to dinner, go to see a movie, and then as we sit down in the movie theater, as like literally the fucking the fucking trailers come on. I couldn't think of the word. As the trailers come on, I look at my phone. I'm scrolling through Twitter. The first thing I see is the Elliott Friedman tweet that Quinn Hughes got traded to the Minnesota Wild. I'm like, what? Like my fucking jaw dropped. Like that was just annoying. That was just annoying. Like out of all teams, the fucking Minnesota Wild, crazy, 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 crazy. Let's get to the chat right here. Then we'll end this stream off. This is more of just a stream to get frustration out, boys. That was mainly what this was. Tyler, side note, that overtime turnover was kind of disappointing. GG's though. Yeah, that was probably the worst turnover I've ever seen in my life by Konechny. And it was also the worst back check by Couturier that I've ever seen in my life. Worst. Drysdale's been very solid. Why is Zamula still on the team? I have no idea. Murchison has looked good, and for what it's worth, in his first few games that he's played so far. So Zamula's going to be gone at some point. Whether it's they put him on waivers or they just cut him at the end of the year when he's an RFA. Be brave, change is possible. Everything you're saying is spot on. We finally have a young, skilled player, and the coach is holding him back. Yeah, I just don't like the way Tockett's coaching him right now. Maybe it changes. I'm not entirely sure. I just don't think he trusts him. I think that's it. John, Wild gave up very little, could have offered a better deal. I don't think the Wild gave up very little either. They gave up a top defensive prospect that they literally just drafted. They gave up a top 6 center in Marco Rossi that is very young and still has immense skill. I don't know what the other guy is personally. They also gave up a first round pick. It's 3 players. It's 3 young players that Vancouver probably wanted. The Flyers would not have been able to match that in my personal opinion. But seriously, they traded away Zeev Bouillon. You would have had to trade away Matvei Michkov for Porter Martone. That's basically it, in my personal opinion. JMJ, or JM Junior 13, add on that these years are supposed to be development years for guys like Michkov. He should be playing in multiple situations so he learns for even if he struggles. I agree. Guido, trade Vancouver made today. I like the Flyers. Made some things with Konechny 2 trade deadlines ago. The return would have been less from TK than Quinn Hughes, but he got something good in return. Yeah, they should have traded Konechny, in my personal opinion. Jack Nesbitt will be a good player from Linden. I hope he is. I really hope he is. I just don't think that he's going to be a game changer. That what this team needs. Hey, Minnesota's trying to win. I can respect the move. I want to be a team that's in a position like that. You make a move to try to win. I want to be in that position eventually. The last 17 years, the Stanley Cup winner has had at least one number 1 or number 2 pick outside of 2019 Blues, who had the number 4 and number 5 pick. You are right. You are right. We are afraid to make the moves to bottom out and build up. Yeah, this team has never drafted first. The highest that I've ever seen this team draft was 2nd overall, and that was luck with Nolan Patrick. And of course, that backfired on you. Of course, Quitter bailing on us really hurt because Drysdale is now number 1. Yeah. That trade was always going to be lopsided in the favor of the Ducks. It just always was, regardless of what Drysdale turned out to be. And it's not to say Drysdale isn't a good player. I think he's really improved this year, but he's not the offensive defenseman that we think he is. I think he's been a very steady 2-way type of guy. He's been very good defensively, in my personal opinion. They always think they're closer to competing than what they are. I do agree. That's been one of their main flaws. A lot. Danny said that will be long, and that's the truth. Devo is playing very well for us. I signed him for 3 more years. Nah, I wouldn't extend Dvorak that long, personally. This is what he's about to put up this year, like to where his projected numbers are going to be this season. It's going to be career best for him. I wouldn't bank on that happening again, in my personal opinion. Would not bank on that again. Continue to draft and develop well. I just hope. What movie did I go watch? You guys will go laugh at this, but my sister begged me to go watch because she saw it with her boyfriend in New York. So she wanted us to go see it so she could talk about it with us. The fucking Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie. I laughed the entire time. Like it's fun. It's what it is. It's a fun kids horror movie. That's what it is. Well, granted, there was some gruesome stuff in there. Obviously, guy's head got fucking crushed in the movie. They didn't show his head getting crushed, but there definitely was some gruesome things there. But I laughed. I laughed a lot of the times. Of course, there's like cheap jump scares in there. Obviously, I laughed. It's stupid fun. I think that's what it is. Wasn't expecting going in there to see a masterpiece. They need to improve their defense, bigger, stronger, and faster. Not impossible to do. Yeah, it's annoying. You saw the first movie on Peacock. Seriously, the thing that I laughed about the most was at the end of the movie. Had a fucking Avengers moment, man. It was the funniest shit in the world. Literally a fucking Avengers moment. I'm like, why? Why? Did I play the games? My sister did. I did not play the games. Every time we tried to play them together, she would always get to like the first try. She would always get to like night 3 or 4 until she inevitably died. And then I'd be like on fucking night 4, like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? I don't know what I'm doing. Like, you put me in the worst possible position. So no, I've never like beaten the games or anything like that. I've always watched people play them on YouTube, like Markiplier and all that stuff. Like, I know the lore and all that stuff with Five Nights at Freddy's. I do watch videos on the lore and all that, but definitely, it's funny though. Crazy stuff. What else is there? What else is there? Flyers, they do play tomorrow. They do play tomorrow. They have a back-to-back on Saturday and Sunday, actually. They play tomorrow against the Carolina Hurricanes. Both the games against the Hurricanes, actually. Tomorrow at home, Sunday on the road. Tomorrow, I don't think I'll be at the game. I'll be home watching John Cena's retirement match, quote-unquote, because there's always that non-zero chance that the final boss comes back and forces him to, hey, still got your soul. You still owe me your soul. So, and you push it off to WrestleMania 42. I don't think it's going to happen now, because I feel like that would be kind of disingenuous to, like, really fooling the fans there. Yeah, I don't think that'll be the case. But I'm still going to watch the Saturday night's main event tomorrow over Flyers. Just look at the schedule, because they do have a lot of road games coming up after this very long, insane fucking 6-game homestand. Tomorrow will be the last of that 6-game homestand. So the schedule. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock against Carolina. Sunday, 5 o'clock against Carolina. Tuesday the 16th in Montreal. Thursday the 18th in Buffalo. The 20th in Madison Square Garden against the Rangers. The 22nd, they're home against Vancouver. Then they have a back-to-back the following night on the 23rd in Chicago. Then they have their Christmas break. Then they play on the 28th, a Sunday night in Seattle. Then they have a back-to-back in Vancouver and Calgary on the 31st and New Year's Eve. Then you go into January, where they finish off that Western Canadian road trip on the 3rd in Edmonton before they come home for a 4-game homestand in January. So, we'll see. We'll see how they play tomorrow and all that stuff. I'm sure we'll see what happens. I'm sure we'll see what happens. In terms of, like, the standings right now, where the Flyers sit in terms of the Eastern Conference in the Metropolitan Division, right now the Flyers are in the first wildcard spot. But like I said, there's so much parity in this division. It's in this conference. It's not even funny. From the Flyers rank to the last place team in Buffalo is only separated by 6 points. Flyers have 36. Buffalo has 30. Flyers are a point ahead of Pittsburgh, point ahead of Montreal, point ahead of New Jersey, 2 points ahead of the Rangers, 3 points ahead of Toronto, 4 ahead of Florida, Ottawa, and Columbus. And in terms of the other teams in the Metropolitan Division, the Flyers are 3 points behind of the Islanders. They've been playing very well this year, and that's the Matthew Schaefer effect, I guess. They're 4 points behind Washington and 4 points behind Carolina. So it'll be a tough game, tough 2 games. Tough 2 games. I think the one time they played Carolina, which was the second game of the year, they went into overtime in that one. And they should have won if it wasn't for a bullshit goalie interference call. So yeah, that definitely is also the case right there. What else is there? What else is there? What else is there? Not sure. If I'm Danny, I'm calling Anaheim if Minchikov is available. Same thing with Chicago if Renzel, a good prospect at defense, shoots right there in a return. That's what Danny's going to have to do. You're going to have to take away of teams that have like either a surplus of prospects that don't have room for them, or a team that has prospects that are disgruntled and not happy with the usage that they have on their teams. You're going to have to do that. That's the way you're only going to be able to get more talent on this roster, in my personal opinion, because you're not in a position to draft high anymore. You're just not. Unless somehow you go on a long losing streak, you're in a position with the draft lottery, and you get lucky. That's the only way I see this working. But I'm not relying on luck. So that'll do it for tonight, everybody. It's past midnight. It's 12:15. So didn't expect this stream to go that long. That's how long when you express frustration. So in terms of the rest of this week, tomorrow, like I said, I'll be watching John Cena's retirement tour. Sunday, we got Eagles Raiders. Same thing with the last half of the Flyers back-to-back. It'll probably be more Eagles focused on Sunday. Then we could focus on Flyers as the week goes on with the road games and all that stuff. So that'll be at least interesting from that standpoint. So, and if there's any more news with the Phillies and all that stuff, definitely we'll cover some news if that happens. So that'll be interesting. Hopefully, if Dave Dombrowski does make another move, JT Realmuto, that offer's still on the table apparently, and there's still plenty of other moves that they do have to make. So hopefully they do make some moves to make it newsworthy. So do appreciate you guys tuning in, as usual. If you are new to the channel, because I think I do have some new people that are in the chat that I haven't seen much. So hopefully you guys do hit that subscribe button. It would definitely do me a great deal of service with the YouTube algorithm. Same thing with dropping a like and leaving a comment as well. So definitely do all that stuff. I would greatly appreciate that. You can also use the code TTPSPORTS, $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. It's a great deal. Don't pass it up. And yeah, we'll be back on Sunday recapping Eagles Raiders. Hopefully that'll just be a more entertaining game. Not entirely sure what it's going to be like, but hopefully. And then we'll be talking Flyers throughout the week and all the other stuff if it's newsworthy. So appreciate y'all for tuning in tonight. Get some sleep. Have a good night. And